Well, hi there. My name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Now, I am in the process of creating a filming studio for myself, and one thing I wanted to add to it was a vase with some type of floral arrangement. Now, I really like right now that boho pumice grass look out of a larger vase. And I found a vase at the thrift store for only $1 that I really liked, so I picked it up. And I kind of was keeping an eye out for some type of grass that I liked, but I wasn't finding anything. And then I stumbled across a video on YouTube that showed how to make them out of skewer sticks and yarn. And while they didn't look exactly like what I wanted, since I wasn't finding anything, I thought, well, let's give it a try. So I filmed it to bring you along for us to look at. Do we like how it turned out? And then is it worth the time or the money for the materials? Because sometimes I think you can see a craft video and go, oh, I'm gonna go make that right now. But then you don't have the supplies, or the supplies are really expensive, or it takes a lot of time. And you go, you know what? It would have been faster to order that online or just pick it up at my local store rather than make it. So I think this will be worth it for you to see in the end, is it worth your time or your money to make these pumice grass? And then do you even like it enough to spend the time to do that? So let's get into the step-by-step process. And then at the end, let's pick it apart and figure out, is it worth it or not to make these? First, you want to gather your materials. Now, I had these two creamy, lighter color yarns, and then the video I saw showed to use a darker yarn for making your stem. However, after this is finished, I think I would prefer to choose one of the colors that I'm using for the fluffy part to also wrap the stem. So I would actually leave the dark color out, but I will let you decide that for yourself by the end of the video. Because I needed about 2 foot long skewers and my skewers were only about 1 foot long, I needed some duct tape and then my skewers. I also used some just craft glue to help glue the string on while I wrapped. I need scissors for cutting my yarn, and then I will also need some hot glue to glue the fringe on later once I have all my stems wrapped. Because my skewers were pretty thin, I decided to use 2 to make it thicker, and I used the pointy ends to connect together to kind of try to make the connection point as slim as possible, not too bulky. So I've just kind of, it's hard to see in the video, but I kind of am setting them so they all fit together nicely, and then just wrapping it in duct tape to make it nice and strong, and I think it's plenty sturdy enough that this will hold. To get the yarn started, I picked an end and just did a square knot with my yarn, and then I'm gonna dab a little glue at the end to help secure it, and then just put a little stretch of glue, wrap until I get to the end of the glue, put a little more stretch of the glue, and wrap until I get to the very end. Now, I did find that at the very tip, if you put a little dot of hot glue, that holds the yarn really well and finishes it off nice, so you can cover all of the wood stick with the school glue. It just took forever to dry and was getting messy, so just a little dab of hot glue does the trick to get your stem finished and fully wrapped. I had a little crafting buddy next to me. This was filmed the day after Easter and the kids were out of school and it was snowing, so it was the perfect day to do a craft inside. Now, once you have all the stems that you want ready and wrapped, it's time to start adding the plumage. To make the feathery part, I grabbed a scrap piece of cardboard and cut it to the width that I wanted one side of the plume to be. And when you're working with yarn, it is ideal to find the string that comes out from the center, and then it's so much easier to pull your yarn out than if you're trying to unwind the ball. Now, this ball was tricky, and I looked and both ends were actually tucked into the yarn. So don't give up, find that end and pull from the center. It'll make your job so much easier. A quick way to measure to cut a plume like this, if you're making a feather or pumice grass, is to just wrap around the cardboard template that you have. This is so much easier than drawing a string out and cutting it. Draw a string out and cutting it. Just wrap, especially if you need a lot like we do for this project. So fill up that cardboard full of yarn. You want a good pair of scissors to just go along one edge and cut the yarn once, and then just lay it out flat on the table, and this will be setting ourselves up for then easily gluing it onto our stick. Before I began gluing, I put the stick next to my laid out yarn just to make sure I had enough cut before I got into the hot glue. To decide where to start gluing, I set it in the vase and measured where I wanted the fringe to start on the stem, and then I started there and worked my way up to the tip. I glued them on a section at a time, so I put a little hot glue on and then put the yarn on there. I made sure not to touch the glued part, but I wanted to press it down firmly and have as few gaps as possible. If I did this again, I would probably try to make them even closer together. It would just look better. So I just worked my way down the rod, and then at the top, I did make sure to glue some more fringe yarn on the very tip to cover the exposed end of the rod. And there is one assembled. We still have one more step to do, and that is to brush the fringe to make it poofy and plumey. But now go glue your fringe on every single rod that you wrapped, and then we will brush them. Here's what they look like before being brushed. So it's getting there. They're looking good, but like I said before, I don't like the dark stem showing. I feel it's too much of a contrast, but you may like it, and you totally make what you want. For brushing it, I find a wide tooth comb was not fine enough to pull the fibers apart, so I went with a more tighter fine tooth comb to do this. Now, I did not realize this when I made this, but the grayish cream yarn that I used was your typical yarn that is kind of twisted and was easy to brush and cause to fluff out. However, the white yarn that I used was some fancy soft stuff, and it was like almost braided, and I could not get it to fluff. So when you buy your yarn, make sure you have just basic twisted yarn. If you're shopping at the Dollar Tree, I'm sure it will be fine, but don't use the soft, fluffy, fancy stuff that is like interwoven braided and will not brush out and doesn't get fluffy. So I was a little bummed after I made all of these that my white ones were not going to fluff like I wanted, but we'll still make do, and I made them as fluffy as I could. I did figure out if you start at the end of the yarn and work your way towards the base, it brushes easier, and you kind of have to brush against the yarn to get it to frizz up and frill. And here's the final look. What do you think? Do you think it looks close enough? Not close enough? What do you think? I like the two-tone look. I like the dark stem turned away where you don't see it. One idea I had was to add more yarn to the other side and brush it so that it's twice as thick. I may or may not do that in the future. We'll see. But I really like how it turned out. I think this was a fun project. It's fun to take something that I already had and make it into something that is decorative and beautiful and fun. Now that we are finished, let's go into the pros and cons of this project. And I'm going to start with the pros because I'm very happy that I decided I really like how these turned out, and I think they're going to work great in my studio. So 3 things that I think are positive with this project. One is when using yarn, you can choose the colors you want, and you can make this more colorful than if you had real pumice grass. That could be a con if you want the muted tannish color from the real grass, but I think it's a pro because you can get a little creative and add a little more pop of color. Another positive thing about this craft is it's the opportunity to be creative, and I like to have things to make that are useful for my home. So if you are a crafty person, I think this could be right up your alley if you like the decorative look of pumice grass. The other positive thing of this is it's a pretty low cost craft. For me, I had all the materials, so it cost me pretty much nothing as far as going to buy stuff. But if you hit up the Dollar Tree, I'm pretty sure you can get most all of this stuff for $10 or less, and you probably already have a good number of things like glue and scissors. So all in all, it's a pretty cost-effective and fun craft to make. Now, the negatives of this is it did take a long time to make. I think those 5 plumes took me about 4 hours. Granted, I was filming, and that does make things take a little longer. However, I would budget, 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on how many plumes you want to make and how tough it is to brush those feathery parts out. Another negative is they don't look real. So if you really want real grass, I would just find it. Maybe you can find an artificial grass that looks real enough, but these don't look real. But I think they turned out great. You can decide for yourself if this is a project that you think is worth taking on for as far as time, money, and how it turned out looking. So thank you for joining me today. If you like DIY videos like this, feel free to hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that. I have all kinds of videos coming out on more than just DIY items. And then also, if you want to know when I upload, hit the bell when you go into my channel so that it will notify you when I upload next. I try to upload on Fridays, but lately, who knows what day I upload. I upload when I get videos done. So thank you again for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.